Hello there YouTube, I am Wheelchair21 and on today's ruling review, we are finally getting to look at the Power Rangers Lightning Collection from Hasbro. The freaking Lightning Collection was announced at last year's Power Morphicon, which I was able to attend, and we knew that the first one in the series was going to be the White Ranger. However, Wave 1 didn't just consist of White Ranger, it consists of Lord Zedd, Shadow Ranger, and the Dino Charged Red Ranger, which I don't have, due to the fact that as these figures are stocking, stores online are not getting their wide shipments and able to, in a sense, meet everyone's orders and are sending them out one at a time, depending on how many figures people have ordered and which ones they wanted more than the other, especially when Lord Zedd is packed one per case. Now, first off, these box arts are amazing, and they were first unveiled at New York Toy Fair, and honestly, they kind of make you think of Bandai's Figuarts line, whether they're the Ultraman, the Kamen Rider, or Sentai characters, and even anime, since they have a very similar style of the box feature. However, they use a nice, awesome, cartoony, artistic render of your character on the front and side of your box, which is really cool, and it's great to know that they're trying to, in a sense, one-up their competition, which is Bandai, or at least their predecessor, since, you know, they can't make Power Ranger toys anymore. So, first off, let's do a quick rundown of each of our boxes for S.P.D and Lord Zedd. So, we got Zedd here, really nice. I like the reds, really brings out the box. And on the back, you have your basic stock image, which is the CGI render from when the initial prototypes were officially unveiled to your audience at New York Toy Fair. And with Shadow Ranger, it's a similar style. However, his is focusing on the blue accents in the Shadow Ranger's actual suit and design, as well as Doggy's actual alien-like skin tone. And on the back, another CGI rendering. And that's practically it, but because of this very nice box style, you can actually line up your figures. They don't create one huge box art, but they do have these nice profiles, which can help differentiate which one you want to display in box, and which ones you want to archive, say, on a bookshelf. Now, unlike my figure art reviews where I show an actual interior packaging, we're just going to jump right to our figures, and we'll talk about the accessories as we move along with our reviews of the Lightning Collections. So first off, let's go with Lord Zedd, because honestly, it's better to go in chronological order than in personal favorites. With Zedd, one thing we should immediately notice is the fact that it is actually a later Zedd suit. Reason why it's a later Zedd suit is because of the actual coil designs for how his blood or energy throws through his veins. These are actually normally more under the bicep, the forearm guard, the crotch guard, and the leg guards. However, as the series went on, the suit kind of deteriorated, and they also realized that the coils made it hard for the suit actor to move, and ironically enough, having the coils in the suit in their proper placement on its initial debut in the show would be weird as a toy, especially if someone has the Star Wars Black Series Val from the Han Solo film, which uses a similar light pipe working system, and it makes the figure actually rigid and hard to pose. So it's a better choice to go with a later Zordon design Zedd suit than an earlier design, because it would just make it a living nightmare. Because these tubes here are very light and firm, and I wouldn't say firm, they're very pliable, they're very malleable, they're very loose, and it really works real well from your abdomen to your back for how they actually move and actually, I guess you would say, sort of breathe with the movements of the suit. Like, they just go real well, they flow real well, and don't hinder it whatsoever. The biggest issue is with the kneecaps, honestly, is where it's a little tighter and a little harder. You can sort of move it at the knee from here or below the joint, but it's probably best that you actually unpeg them, which is also ironic since in the show, the suit from time to time would actually feature our knee pads or knee braces that held these wires falling off and flowing a little too loose. You mostly see it towards the end of Season 3 and throughout, actually, Zeo, if you pay close attention to the suit. The suit must have been hard to manage and repair, and there probably had to have been at least 2 or 3 versions of it out there by the time the series ended, or at least alternate parts due to just maintenance to keep this thing afloat, due to the fact it's our, like, real first original villain in the franchise. One thing that really does stand out is because it's supposed to be probably a later suit, It's a lot of a darker red, more of a reddish brown, and it really makes the muscle tissue stand out a lot in Zedd's legs, in his abdomen, in his overall just body design. It's one of those elegant features that made the character actually so menacing and grotesque when you think about it, with all these silver braces over like an entire muscle suit. It looks pretty menacing, and it doesn't help that the head here has so many weird villainous pop culture references. You have a weird gooey meshy brain. You have a weird grainy actual faceplate that kind of guards his actual scarred residual like remains of his face. You have a Cyclops like mono eye where he shoots laser beams out of to view the world with. It's weird, his weird vision how his vision works, almost like a Cyclops ray. And then he has this weird shit-eating grin. This is one of the cool things about the suit, is its very weird shit-eating grin that I've always loved about it. I've always found it kind of menacing and comedic, which actually helps the character as the series progresses, I think. And then you also have his iconic weird antenna, which I have a weird feeling it was supposed to be like a throwback to old 60s and 70s tokusatsu characters and villains and anime characters, where he maybe should have or could have shot laser beam from it, but who knows. It's just a weird, I think, attribute to the overall suit. But for articulation, he has quite a lot, like a figure of Marvel standards for Marvel Legends Black Series. He has your basic thigh joint, hip joint, double jointed knees that you can see here. He has ankle joints and pretty good swivel and pivot. Honestly, comparing it to a figure art is pretty good. The only difference would be for legs would probably be how its actual crotch would slightly unhinge down and maybe give you a little bit more flow and movement. And then for your abdomen, it moves actually more humane-like. We have an actual ab crunch in the lower waist area instead of a waist swivel, where we have the upper ab pectoral crunch, which moves more humanely. This moves so well, and I love this. It really reminds me a bit of DC Classics and Masters of the Universe. Then we have actually the butterfly shoulders. Butterfly shoulders are a thing that kind of sucks with some of the Spider-Man figures, because they either get too loose or they're too floppy and suck around the shoulders. However, I think by now Hasbro's perfected it with the Marvel Legends, that it's going to be a real good transition for your overall Power Rangers figures. And then you have a bicep swivel, you have your elbows, and one thing I really do like is the fact that the joints on here are super ass firm, which means they're probably going to get loose after maybe a month or two of excessive playing. So probably just use these as display pieces, not too much of toys. The wrists, I think the wrists are pretty nice having a swivel and hinge, since they all come out on pegs. I do think, though, that the way that the pegs go in are a little bit too thin compared to previous figures I've seen in the Hasbro series, so they might end up snapping and breaking off at the joint, which is a bad thing. I've heard that it's happened a bit on Star-Lord figures from the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 series. And then we have our head and neck joint, which, you know, it's a ball joint on a hinge, so it has very omnidirectional movements, and I think overall for a figure, it really stands out and is kind of different, but is the best of both worlds for someone who collects tokusatsu figure arts and collects the Marvel Legends series. With our Shadow Ranger has a lot of interesting aspects to your overall suit. Not just because he's supposed to be like a space cop that is kind of overly armored with like kind of SWAT mode type SWAT vest and gear like on his kick pads and stuff, but honestly because they've done something that Bandai would never have done in that regards, is that we have a actual moving belt similar to figure arts, and honestly I do like that we have an actual rubbery kind of movable belt so it doesn't hinder his waist. And we actually have the vest here, his 100 or his 00 vest here. It actually is a loose, malleable, plastic torso piece. Like, it's rubbery, it could probably come off easily, and it just, you know, moves. It helps the fact that it doesn't hinder the actual figure's shoulders or abdominal joints whatsoever when you move around. And I really do like the interior design on how the Ranger suits are probably going to be a bit different than your villain suits because of the more streamlined features of your suit and your character. So we have the same points of articulation, just the way that the joints will be designed will be a little bit different. One thing I do notice about my Shadow Ranger is I don't know if the legs, because they have the actual wear of like the crotch of the pants or the slacks of the leggings, is that like it kind of makes it hard for the figure to actually stand straight and balanced. So it's like you really got to play around with you got to play around a bit with your knees, with your actual ankles to get a good solid figure, as well as these actual shin guards or these kicking pads. They actually move up and down, so it's easier to, I guess, make sure you articulate your legs correctly. So you can either slide them up here to make them look probably base standard standing pose, and then in action they kind of slide down if you ever watch the suit, whether it be the American version or the Japanese version. Decker Ranger. With the butterfly shoulders, like I said, having this more rubbery plastic breastplate doesn't hinder your figure. However, I think it will hit some snags, but you just gotta probably just pliably, malleably mash it around so you can get all around. And honestly, the head, it will get hindered by the high collar of the armor breastplate, but it's really good. I think the head works real fine. Looks real nice. I like the details. It hits all of that Doggy Kruger, Shadow Ranger finish real well. And I think it might be just missing maybe a bit of detail on your shoulder pads for the SPD badge in general. But overall, it's pretty good. As you see, he has a hip waist-mounted holster for his D Sword Vega or the Shadow Saber. And on the back, where you would actually attach your Morpher if this was the Figure Arts release, is just one molded piece, which kinda does suck. So let's get our figures with their accessories and then go into our, I guess, additional stuff. First up is Lord Zedd's staff. Honestly, on the inside area, you see a little bit of the molding of the plastic. And since this is a late-era Zordon Zedd suit for the basis of this figure, the actual blade goes to your right rather than to your left when you would see it be held like this by Zedd. The actual curve is actually supposed to face with the Z than against it. However, due to the fact that a lot of people believe that the staff itself was screwed together in the middle here or around the top area, could explain why later variations had the staff inverted due to just how they applied and put the thing together. As well as, since for budgetary costs, it's not chromed out or nicely silver painted to match a skeletal design, which is kind of a bummer, but not honestly defeating its purpose, due to the fact that we at least have the Zedd Growth Detonation Bomb, or Grenade, which is a really cool feature that a lot of Zeds tend to omit. We also have a red Force Lightning effect, which is really good, as well as 2 optional hands. Now, interestingly enough, this right hand matches the left hand that is already applied to Zedd, and this closed fist, I don't necessarily understand why we have it, especially when there isn't a right closed fist to match with it. So, one thing though that a lot of people tend to, I think, overlook or miss about this feature is the fact that with this claw, this would also be able to hold the detonation bomb, the growth bomb, and with a closer look at his hands, they are missing the iconic silver to his more Talonine-like fingernails, which kinda does suck. One thing also about this is that this hand is also better for holding the staff at the center, due to the fact that the already applied hand is better to hold it at the top. However, due to variations with the actual stunt actor who performed the Zedd suit, he usually actually preferred to hold it in more of a walking stick like cane than holding it like an actual scepter slash wand or bow staff where you would hold it more towards this firm grip. He would like to hold it just like this, and usually he would summon the bomb either with the left or right hand. It really didn't frickin' matter. It just was personal frickin' preference at this point, even though it's not going in for me right now, even though it goes in for so many others that have reviewed it thus far. The Shadow Ranger's Shadow Saber, or the D Sword Vega, is actually a really cool highlight about the overall figure. However, it doesn't incorporate the ability to close and open the jaw like it did on the toy, as well as in the show. However, as being a badass katana, you can see a lot of the cool features that are in there, such as, like I said, the movable jaw and the weird little trigger. That allowed it to, I think, shoot random bullets from the jaw of the wolf, or it was actually supposed to be from the tip of the sword. It never made sense since they rarely used it in the American footage, whereas in Deca Ranger it is obviously slightly apparent in some scenes in the series. On top of that, we also have the S.P.D Morpher, which isn't molded accurately. While it says S.P.D and has all the actual front plating right for the regalia and the design, which is hard to get on camera, the actual grip here is actually supposed to be on your right side. So I do believe if Shadow Rangers ever reissued in a Legacy line, or a Legacy reissue like they've done with Star Wars Black figures, it'll be remolded to match the more accurate show design, since we still don't even have our basic 5 Rangers from the series. We also have 2 pairs of additional hands. This one was usually when he, I guess, would summon the mecha and a few other poses. This one's to actually hold your Morpher. It's not that great. It's not that spectacular. We have a blue blade wind swirl effect to make some badassery slash effects. It's actually supposed to, like, circulate around the blade, but I kind of don't like it because it probably could bend and royally F up your blade altogether. I mean, it looks sort of nice attached, but eh. And then we have your spare Doggy Kruger head. Now, it also comes with, like, this little neck windsock to recreate the full maquette for the animatronic head. So it's a nice added feature overall, which we will apply to it for our little final evaluation. And then one big thing before we go right into our final evaluation is the fact that there is a slight size comparison between your actual original Bandai 5-inch, or I would say 4.73 or 4.75 5-inch basic figure, and your Bandai Legacy Collection figure. There isn't a real good scale in comparison. I do think, though, because Zedd's suit was at times seen to be a little short when he actually did face off with the White Ranger, it's not that bad of a comparison between Zedd and White, even though White obviously looks a little bit too steroidy and bulky in comparison to Zedd, whereas these, like, movie Ranger figures, or most of the figures up to Ninja Steel, would be probably only up to his breastplate, wouldn't sit real well. I even thought that maybe with the actual Lightning Collection, they might sit well with our actual Super Mini Plot figures. However, I think it's going to vary depending on character, Ranger, and villain to how well it's going to look. But, hey, if you really want to create the old school Power Rangers, the movie Fighting Edition video game, go right ahead. I mean, you got your Ninja Megazord, you got your Lord Zedd. Now you just need to wait for an Ivanus and a few Zhu 2 monsters, and you'll have a fun time. I mean, just look at this. You can recreate that loading screen right frickin' now. It's evaluation time, and for my final evaluation, Hasbro's Power Rangers Lightning Collection is off to a good start with our first wave. Even though this is the first half of the wave, consisting of Lord Zedd and Shadow Ranger here on screen, and aforementionedly White Ranger and Dino Charge Red Ranger, this gives us a good notion of what Bandai's actually going to do having these figures in hand. A lot of these figures are going to be based off of the actual suits, off of actual pictures, sculpt, and whatever's left over for Hasbro to sculpt and detail to make these action figures. One thing, though, that is great about these is that for $19.99, it is a huge improvement than the $19.99 figures known as the Legacy line from Bandai of America, which they thought, hey, let's not give them their best efforts, let's just go in half-ass. This is full-ass, and honestly, they look incredible. For Zedd, the only issues they have with him are probably budgetary costs, like not painting in the fingernails on each of the individual hands, as well as painting his staff. Whereas Shadow Ranger, it's practically sort of the same issue, where he is missing some paint, probably from his fingertips, maybe some better paint apps for the sword, since I've noticed some of them have, like, weird rubbing marks and scratch marks, and overall maybe remolding the Morpher. Overall, giving the Doggy Kruger head as an added bonus is really nice, and so I think they both complement themselves for early first wave figures. However, in later waves, I could see Hasbro going a little bit more and further beyond, whether it be accessory counts or actual packaging and whatnot, because since this is being marketed kind of like a cross-brand style of the actual Star Wars Black Series figures and the Hasbro Marvel Legends figures, I could see stuff like assortments and waves being like, instead of just 4 characters, being somewhere between 4 to 8. We could also see stuff like Lord Zedd being reprinted or reissued later on in the series to actually be accompanying with his throne, having a more optical vision effect like he used to do, where he would look down on Earth with an actual new headpiece with the beam effect, and be like an Amazon exclusive similar to the Return of the Jedi Emperor Palpatine with throne on Amazon. And then with like Shadow Ranger, maybe like Shadow Ranger in his ATV, or other Rangers with their motorcycles, or other Rangers with whatever vehicles, or similar to the actual Marvel Legends Angel for like $30. We could see stuff like Battleizer figures for $30, or Megazord figures as like online exclusives and gift sets and whatnot. So there's a lot of potential that will probably come to fruition in like 2021 or 2022. Like, I think if it's going to be more of a long con than them going right out of the gates. Like, we're just going to get waves after waves similar to Star Wars, and they're going to grow within like their first 2 to 4 years and then expand further. So with this is a nice fresh start that people are going to surely love and want to buy. I do recommend that Lord Zedd is a must because of he is the one per case. So get him if you see him in your local store, but online it might be a little bit easier to purchase with things like Hasbro Pulse and Amazon and so on and so forth. But if you're trying to go for the full wave, try to buy a case off a Big Bad Toy Store if you're that crazy. So overall, I do recommend these figures. I do think there could be a lot more they could add to them as the years go on, and we'll talk about that more as more figures are released. Anyways, if you like this review, if you like these characters, leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe if you already haven't subscribed to me, Wheelchair21, here on YouTube. Check me out on Twitter, check me out on Facebook, check me out on Instagram. Links are in the description below, as well as check out my website, HeroClub.com. And I'll see you all next time with another Rolling Review and/or Doyle's DVDs.